I'd like to introduce to you the founders of OhioUnited4America, Rhonda Ball, Holly Adams, and Irene Ross. I'd like to mention we would ask you to silence your cell phones, and there's no recording of this event except by our gentleman, Roy, in the back. Restrooms are back there. We have collected questions prior to the event, and there will be no questions from the floor. And we'd like to thank our sponsors and you all for supporting our Make Ohio Great 2020 efforts. And I'd like to introduce to you Irene Watts.
I need the class. In introducing Jim, I'm sure everybody is here and knows who he is, but I want to give you a little bit of background. Jim was raised in rural Champaign County, Ohio, graduated at the University of Wisconsin with a bachelor's in economics. He went on to earn his master's degree in education from the Ohio State University and a law degree from Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. He and his wife, Polly, have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. He's been a representative for Ohio's 4th Congressional District since 2007 and a founding member of the House Freedom Caucus. Currently, Congressman Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and their work with the Oversight Committee are working on various abuses of the FISA processes and failure to comply with congressional subpoenas. And amen for all your efforts. Jim has made notable accomplishments such as being the only legislator in state history to achieve the Defender of Life Award from Ohio Right to Life and the Pro-Life Legislator of the Year. He has authored the Cut, Cap, and Balance Plan, which is the only balanced budget plan of any member of the House or Senate. Jim is also focused on his oversight role, helping lead investigations into federal agencies, including the IRS. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Congressman Jim Jordan.
Don't clap, I haven't said anything. Very, very kind of you, Kathy, and Eileen. Thank you for, and your whole team for starting this fine organization. And thank all of you for doing what you do. You know, I say this all the time, but I say it because I believe it. I learned a long time ago, good things in life don't just happen. Typically, you want to accomplish anything that's important, anything that's meaningful, anything that is significant and of lasting value. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice, and probably most importantly, it takes a willingness to assume the risk associated with trying to accomplish something that matters. And you're all doing that. You're off the sidelines, you're in the game, and that's where you get attacked, right? I always tell my colleagues in the, Eileen mentioned the Freedom Caucus, I tell my buddies in the Freedom Caucus, if the press isn't saying something bad about you, you're not doing anything any good. It's just kind of the way it works, yeah. Just ask the president, man. CNN's got one mission in life, to ruin the president's life, right? It's ridiculous. But thank you for doing it. Thank you for fighting the good fight and standing up and defending the values that make our country special. And now more than ever, it's important. You know, we're 8 days before an election, and I said this the other day to a group, the left is going crazy. There's no other way to say it. I mean, if they take back Congress, they are going to try to raise your taxes. They are, you've heard all this, but it's true. It's not my words, it's their words. They're going to try to raise your taxes. They're going to try to abolish ICE, never secure the border, never build a border security wall. They're going to continue to socialize medicine, and they're going to impeach the president. That's what they're about. We did this tweet the other day, got all the left mad when we did this tweet. It said, today's left, they applaud Kaepernick when he disrespects the flag. They embrace Governor Cuomo when he says America was never that great, and they cheer on Maxine Waters when she says go out and harass anyone who supports the president. That's today's left. Contrast that. I mean, you can frame this election up real clear. I think show the stark and sharp contrast that exists between the two visions of the parties. That's what the left wants to do. They're the party of Kaepernick, Cuomo, and Waters, and all their crazy left-wing ideas. Contrast that with the record of achievement in the last 21 months under President Trump's leadership. It is truly phenomenal. I mean, think about it. Regulations reduced, taxes cut, economy growing at a record rate, unemployment lowest in 40 years, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh on the court, out of the Iran deal, hostages home from North Korea, and oh, by the way, there's a new NAFTA agreement. And that would be a good presidency. That would be a good term. That's a year and a half, right? And what does the left? The left thinks that, oh, this is the worst. It's unbelievable the differences in the two parties. So when you think about what's at stake over the next 8 days, we got to elect Republicans. I mean, you got to help make sure Steve wins. I talked to Steve last night, calling and said I'm going to be in your district tomorrow night. We got to help Republicans across the country win because. I mean, you've heard this too. If they take back the House, Elijah Cummings chairs Oversight, committee I'm on. Jerry Nadler will chair Judiciary, another committee I'm on. And Adam Schiff will take on the Intelligence Committee. No. That's an oxymoron. Yeah. And they will investigate the heck out of the first family. And it'll, at some point, they can't help themselves. They will do the impeachment. And American politics will be consumed by an impeachment proceeding for the next 2 years. So it is important that every single district, and I know some of you are not just from Steve's district, but from around the state, help elect your Republican member. And here's what's at stake. And I don't say this to be overly dramatic or anything, but I think fundamental liberty is being attacked today from all directions. And it is scary. When you think about where the left wants to take us, and you can go down the list, I mean, every major institution today, this is what's amazing. In spite of the fact that every major institution is controlled by the left, Republicans still win, which is amazing, right? Hollywood controlled by the left, mainstream media controlled by the left, academia controlled by the left, big cities run by the Democrats. In spite of all that, we still have a Republican House, Senate, and Donald Trump in the White House. But it's about freedom, and think where the left wants to take us. So we started thinking about, let's start with colleges and universities. You guys followed this whole safe space, free speech zone, bias response teams. You heard about this fact? Bias response teams on campuses. People run around and make sure you're not saying anything politically incorrect. It's a fancy name for tattletales, right? They run around campus and you say something politically incorrect, you're in trouble. There could be disciplinary action. There could be something on your transcript, your official record. I mean, think about it. I'm old enough to remember I thought you went to college to do politically incorrect. But now you say something politically incorrect, you get in trouble. So we've been doing a series of hearings. I get the privilege of chairing one of the subcommittees. There's a few others, and my buddy Mark Meadows chairs another one. So we've been doing joint subcommittee hearings on the First Amendment. And the first hearing was about a year or so ago. We talked about the ability of pastors to be able to preach and not have the IRS jeopardize their taxes and status, not tell them what you can and can't say from the pulpit. That was a good hearing. We had a second one where we had Ben Shapiro and Adam Carolla come in. If you haven't watched Carolla, he was hilarious. I mean, he's a comedian. He's supposed to be funny, right? But he was great, talking about what's going on campus and all. It was fun, and Shapiro did a great job. Our third one, we had a number of college professors in, and near the end of the hearing, I asked the one professor, I said, Professor, on a campus, can a safe space and a free speech zone be at the same location? You gotta think about it, right? It's ridiculous. This is where the left takes us. This is the absurd position you get when you follow the left's thinking. And he kind of chuckled, and I said, or is it like a Venn diagram where there's only a little bit of overlap, right? Remember we learned that back in school sometime, I said, Venn diagram, you have 1 foot in safe space, 1 foot in the free speech zone, but there's a little bit of space in the middle where you can be involved, right? You can be safe and free. Go figure. I said to this other professor, I said, Professor, in a safe space, on a college campus, could I say this sentence? Donald Trump is president. His response began, Congressman, it depends. So when I talk about where the left wants to take the country, think about that. So I cut him off, which sometimes I'll do if I think someone's saying something stupid. And I said, it's a fact. There's no it depends about it. He was elected on November 6th, 2016, sworn in on January 20th, 2017, lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He is president of the greatest country in history. He is president of the United States, Donald Trump. I mean, there's no it depends. This is what's going on campuses that your tax dollars pay for, by the way. So you see that in academia, you see it, this is in the private sector, but it's scary as well. The big social media companies. I mean, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Google, all this stuff. You know, you search a Freedom Caucus guy on Google, the first thing that'll pop up is, in 3rd grade they got a detention, and it'll be anything, it'll be something negative, right? But you search Hillary Clinton on Google, it'll pop up like she's wonderful, unicorns and rainbows, and it's not quite that bad, but you know what I'm saying. So this summer, I didn't even know what this term meant, because I'm an old guy. Our staff knew, and our kids knew. 4 members of Congress were shadow banned on Twitter. I didn't know what shadow ban meant, but it made it tough once you're on Twitter to find their accounts and follow what they're saying on. And of course, Jack Dorsey said, well, it's just, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, he said it's just a glitch in their algorithm. Now think about this for a second. He said it's a problem with our search auto-suggest function and a glitch in our algorithm, something crazy. There are 435 members of the House, 100 of the Senate, 535 members of Congress, and 4, Gates, Meadows, Nunes, Jordan, 4 conservative Republicans get shot. 4 out of 535. 4 conservative Republicans, and Jack Dorsey says it's a glitch in our algorithm. I said, really? What did you put in the algorithm? The names Gates, Meadows, Nunes. That's the other part that bugs me. It's like, do you think we're stupid? So we're seeing it in academia, we're seeing it from the big social media companies, and frankly, I haven't even got to the most important thing, which is government, right? And you all know this because many of you, and groups like you around the country, just, what was it now, it had been 7 years ago, were systematically, and for a sustained period of time, targeted by the IRS for your political beliefs. Now think about it. Just go back to the basics for a second. Think about the First Amendment and our rights that we enjoy in the First Amendment. Your right to practice your faith the way you think the good Lord wants you to. Our right to assemble. Our right to petition our government. Freedom of the press. But under the First Amendment, what's the most fundamental liberty we have? The most big. The right to do what I'm doing right now. To speak. And when the founders were putting together the First Amendment and talking about your right to speak, what kind of speech were they most concerned about?
Political.
Speech that is political in nature. You have a right to speak out against your government and not be harassed for doing so. But what did the IRS do? They went after that very thing. That's why I thought this was the worst thing I'd ever seen. What they did. And it started with a little group in, maybe some of you don't know this. I represent Shelby County, Ohio, Sydney, Ohio. We had a group of Tea Party folks there. And they came to us clear back in 2012. And they said, we think we're getting harassed by the IRS. Really? And so they told us about it. So our staff actually met with Lois. Remember, Lois Lerner was a central player in the state. Our staff on the Oversight Committee and some of our personal staff from our congressional office met with Lois Lerner, and she lied to him. She said, no, we're not doing anything out of the ordinary. This is normal way we do business. I said, oh, really? And some of them believed her. Someone said, I don't know, maybe. We called for an audit. Darrell Ice and I called for an audit by the Inspector General of the Treasury. Lo and behold, a year later, he said, yes, they were in fact harassing people and intimidating people and doing asking all kinds of ridiculous questions. I thought that was the worst thing I'd ever seen. I thought it was the worst thing I've ever seen from our government until this past year, when I saw what the FBI did. Said nothing can be worse than an agency with the power of the IRS going out and harassing taxpayers, making life tough for them, doing the things they're doing. Nothing can be worse than that until I saw that the FBI took one party's opposition research document, dressed it all up, made it appear to be legitimate intelligence, took it to a secret court to get a warrant to do what? Go spy on the other campaign. And think about it. You're informed, you know, Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Clint Simpson and Fusion GPS, who hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who went out and talked to Russians to put together this fake dossier, uncredible dossier that was then given to the FBI through who? An employee of Fusion GPS, Nellie Orr, whose husband was a top official at the Justice Department, got it, gave it to the FBI. They took that to the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on President Trump's campaign in America. So this is, you want to know how bad it is? Tell me if you've ever seen this happen. Top people at the FBI, James Comey, fired. Andy McCabe, lied 3 times under oath, fired. Jim Baker, chief counsel at the FBI, demoted, then left the FBI. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, demoted, then left the FBI. And Peter Strzok, deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI, first demoted, then fired. The 5 top people. Not just the top people, but the top people who ran the Clinton investigation, launched and ran the Russian investigation, were running the Russian investigation until Rod Rosenstein appointed Bob Mueller as a special counsel May 17th of last year. This all happened at our FBI. So, when I talk about freedom, you're getting it from every direction. And again, it just underscores why the election next Tuesday is so darn important. And here's what else happens. Not to beat this to death, but when freedom starts being attacked, you start having elected officials do and say things that are just flat out wrong. Remember, I mentioned Maxine Waters. Remember her first rant back in June? You get in her face at the restaurant, at the department store. Remember, she got on the big, literally 2 days after that. My wife Polly and I, first time we've ever went to the theater in DC. So we're at the theater, we're inside, and there's this big line of people. We're walking up this ramp, and I got our tickets out. I'm literally just looking for the person in the red jacket, right? You know, the person who's going to, the usher, who's going to tell me, like, you go there. We're just walking along. And all of a sudden, I hear behind me this voice, some lady's voice, Jim Jordan. And just the way she said it, I'm like, we're going to get the treatment. I could just tell the tone of the voice. And then this lady started amping it up. It was Jim, evil. Shame. She started putting her hands up, and now I'm like, oh, great. I try to keep my head down, because someone's always filming, you know, they were filming out. Now I'm really looking for the person in the red jacket, right? And we start going along, and she just hands up and getting loud, making a scene, and Polly, she handled it better than I did. She just turned to this lady, and all she said, 2 words, please stop. Because it was like embarrassing, right? And the lady goes, I can't believe you're married to this man. And I told Polly later, you should have said, yeah, I can't believe it either. You believe it? I could have done a lot better than this guy, you know. Go to the theater, get harassed because of him, you know. So, but think about it, we would never do that to people. But they're encouraging it. Like, they're encouraging that kind of, it is just wrong. And here's the difference. Dennis Kucinich is a friend of mine. And Dennis is, he's like I can't get there, right? He's like way over there to the left, right? But he is an honorable guy. And there's a difference between, Dennis and I worked together on some things. We would, typically at Civil Liberties, but we fought, when I first got to Congress, we worked together trying to stop your tax dollars from going to the big banks, bailing out Wall Street banks, which I thought was not how free markets are supposed to work and capitalism is supposed to work. So Dennis is a good guy. He really, we disagree on just about everything, but there's some things, but he's honorable in that he'll get his best idea, have the debate, let's see what happens, right? There's a difference between Dennis Kucinich and the way he thinks we should conduct business, the way we've always done it in this country, and what today's left is doing. And that's a problem. That's not healthy for our culture, in my judgment. The other thing that happens too, when you see freedom being attacked, and just this sort of constant attack on just basic liberty, you also start to see government officials who aren't square with the citizens. So one of the other committees I had the privilege of serving on was the Benghazi Committee. And remember this, on 9/11/2012, 4 Americans gave their life for our country. The night of that attack, while the attack is still happening, Our government's official statement came from the Secretary of State, Secretary Clinton. And she said this at 10:08. She said, some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. Blaming a video at 10:08 that night while Tyrone Woods is still on the roof of the annex in Benghazi fighting for his life and defending his fellow citizens. The head of our government, the spokesperson for our government on that issue that evening, was saying something that she knew was not true. And we know she knew that because the next day she had a conversation with the Egyptian Prime Minister where she said, we know the film had nothing to do with it, it was a planned attack, not a protest. This is what happens when you start to see freedom infringed and attacked. You get people like the Secretary saying, and then 2 weeks ago she says, we'll be civil when we win. It's supposed to be just the opposite. Like, my background's in sport of wrestling. In wrestling, you shake hands before the match. You compete hard during the match. And win or lose, you shake hands at the end. You're civil throughout. In fact, it's more important to be civil when you don't win, right? That's what we're supposed to teach student athletes. And she's saying, as the head of their party, she's saying exactly the opposite. So, again, thanks for what you're doing. The next week is critical. Talk to anyone and everyone, not just in the state, but around the country, top of the ticket on down. Understand this. Maybe I'll stop here. I think we said we had some questions. It's the best country going. You know, like I said, my background's wrestling, and wrestling's been kind to me. I wanted to play when I was, maybe I shared this Sunday. When I was in second grade, I knew what I was going to do. I had life figured out like a lot of second graders. I knew that I was going to play middle linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, I grew up in the 70s. I know we're in Eagles and Browns territory, and of course Buckeye territory, but I grew up in the 70s, and the Steelers were winning everything. So you're in grade school, you just love the winners, and I can name Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, John, me and Joe Green, I can name them all, but my favorite guy was Jack Lambert, who played middle linebacker for the Steelers. I wanted to beat him, that's what I wanted. But obviously you can tell I'm 5'7" and a half. So yeah, I had to wrestle, and but wrestling's been great for our family and wrestle all over the United States, but also in 1987 went to what was then the Soviet Union, went to Cuba in 88 and 90. And I tell folks, you go to places like that, you thank the good Lord you live here. I mean, I was joking, say Moscow in February. Moscow in February, it's like 400 below zero. And it's the coldest place I've ever been. The food wasn't any good. Cuba's a warm Soviet Union, right? It really is. They were driving 58, 59 Chevys when I was there in 1988. I was there in 1990. They were driving 58, 59 Chevys. And my guess is in 2018, they're still driving 58, 59 Chevys. And again, it's not about the people. People are people, right? We're all in need of God's grace. But when you have systems that limit freedom and don't allow free enterprise and capitalism, bad things happen. And so sometimes it's important, I think, just to cut to the fundamentals and understand what's at stake. I'm nervous if we don't stop some of the trends we're seeing. You know, Jefferson had a line, he said, when government fears the people, there's liberty. When people fear the government, there's tyranny, right? You all know this. And it begs the obvious question, which direction are we trending? And that's why you're all involved. I'll maybe finish here. Since the World Series ended last night, Dodgers didn't win, but 30 years ago, this year, the Dodgers did win. They had a guy pitching for him named Hershiser. Remember him? The Bulldog, didn't have the best fastball, didn't have the best, but was tough and knew how to win and was the leader of the team. They won the World Series. Lasorda was the manager. Gibson hit that one homer in that game, bottom of the ninth, right? Whatever it was. Anyway, after that season, Hershiser writes a book. I read his book. And he has a line early in the book where he says, great things can happen to ordinary people who work hard and never give up. Great things happen to ordinary people who work hard and never give up. And my favorite word in the statement is the word ordinary. Stop and think about it. We're all just regular, ordinary people. Nobody's any better than anybody else. Like I said, we all need God's grace. But in this country, ordinary people don't have to do ordinary things. They can do great things. They can do extraordinary things. if they're willing to work hard and never quit. And that is a statement that has characterized this nation from day one. My concern is, in the future, if the left gets a hold, if the left starts changing things in the direction they want to go, it will make it that much tougher for ordinary, regular American families to chase down their goals and their dreams. It'll make it that much harder. And that hurts your nation and just hurts the whole darn planet. So that's what's at stake. And again, like I said, you guys understand it. And thank you for doing that, and thank you for fighting the good fight. So that's probably enough for me talking about.
Okay. We had a few questions that came via email that people wanted to ask the Congressman Jordan, so I'm just going to proceed right to those. And the first one from Tom Andrews, right here in front. At the time of the founders and framers, the debate was big government against small government. That eventually changed to big government, liberal leftists against small government, conservatives on the right. Now it appears that the debates between progressives and anti-progressives it is still big government against small government, but now it is also same-sex marriage, killing of the unborn, freedom of speech, Second Amendment issues, single-payer health care, out-of-control spending, etc. How do you feel about battling the progressives over these issues if or when you become Speaker of the House?
Let me start with the last thing you mentioned, Eileen. So look, this is probably the first time it's been tried where we've tried to nationalize a student council election. Because, you know, in the end, if we keep the majority, which I think we're going to, it's just the Republicans who select their nominee, elect their nominee, and then it's really only two student council elections. You have one within the conference, 200 some Republicans who will hopefully be the majority of the Congress, and then you have the election on the January 3rd, on the first day of the new session. But I've been pleased with the grassroots support. Look, we're not the favorite by any stretch. We're the long shot by everyone's, all the conventional wisdom. But grassroots-wise, it's been tremendous. Almost every major conservative organization is supporting us. Hannity, Levin, Dobbs have endorsed us. And there's been some polling around and surveys around where we actually do better than where we were the top vote getter between Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Scalise. So we'll see. Main thing is the next 8 days keep the majority. To all the other points, you're right. That's why I talk so much about freedom and liberty. It's about fighting for those fundamental things that make us great. And never forget this fact either. The first institution the good Lord put together wasn't the church, and it wasn't the state. Let's lay it over here. It was moms, dads, and kids, right? So in the end, the strength of that institution, I think, ultimately determines the strength of your culture. And strong families and incentivizing and recognizing the strength of families, I think helps liberty, I think helps your country across the board. So it's one of the reasons I'm so pro-life, because I mean, it seems to me taking life of an unborn child is the most anti-family thing you can allow happen in your culture. So yeah, we should have policies that are, why are you for tax cuts? Because it's good economics, but more importantly, it's good for moms and dads to keep their money to spend on their goals, their dreams, their kids. So that's something I think we have to emphasize in our policy. And then the main thing is just do what we said. So I rattle off that list of accomplishments the president's done, and the president's keeping his word. You realize that, take the embassy in Jerusalem, for example. The embassy in Jerusalem passed back in the 90s. It was like a 93-5 vote in the Senate. Every candidate who's ever run for office said, I'm going to do it. And they get off and say, well, there's 1,000 reasons why I can't do what I told you I was going to do, and more importantly, what you elected me to do, and I'm not going to do it. President Trump said, I'm going to do it. I told him I was going to do it. I'm going to do it. Well, the world wanted everything to go crazy. I'm going to do it. He did it, and guess what? It's still fine. It worked out fine, right? So you'd think we would learn from like this example, but what were the two biggest promises made in 2016? Two biggest promises in the campaign that we made, Republicans made to the border security wall, and what else? What's second? Judges are big too. I would say replace Obamacare, right? Yeah. Now the tax cuts are big too. We did that. The judges have been great. The Senate has done well there. But the two I would argue the biggest is build the border security wall, secure the border, and replace Obamacare. We haven't got this done. So let's do what we said. It's typically not a bad thing to keep your promise and keep your word. So that's what we got to focus on.
Okay, the next question comes from Kim Wilhelm, right here. Her question for Jim is about health reform benefits concerning the new industry of electroceuticals. Am I pronouncing it? Okay. Google and GSK is spending about $700 billion on the market, and this disruptive technology is scientifically proven to improve overall health. I currently work with a 20-year-old company that's only been in the U.S. for 2 years. My clients are looking for alternatives to drugs, but this industry is not currently supported by insurance. Would you be willing to incorporate legislation to allow Ohioans to receive special accounts for alternative therapies, including these electroceuticals?
I gotta admit, I don't know a whole lot about that 10-cent word you used there, but what I am for is what we've been talking about, freedom, and the idea that you should be able to establish and set up your health savings account and spend it on those things that you think are good for your health, whether that's, chiropractic care, physical therapy, doctor, whatever. It seems to me that makes sense. It's, after all, it's your money. But I don't know enough about the type of procedures you're talking about, the type of medicine you're talking about. The problem right now with healthcare, in simple terms, you all know this, is you got way too much government involvement. Simple. So you have to get to a model that actually empowers the patient and encourages the patient to think about price in those situations where they can prior to making a healthcare decision. If you're having a heart attack, you don't think about price, you think about care as quick as you can. But there's lots of surgeries, lots of procedures where you have a chance and time to actually examine price before making the decision. And we have to encourage that. We also have to get back to where you can shop for the kind of insurance that meets your family's needs, not some everything covered in every single policy. Then just right now, if you're in the, I'm sure some of you know this, if you're in the individual small group market, you cannot afford it. You're paying, if you're a family buying out there in the individual market, you're spending 10, 12, 15,000 a year in premiums, not to mention the deductible, that's 10, 12, 15,000. So you have something major happen to your son or daughter, you're out 30 grand before you get the first dollar of benefit. And I would just say, remember, Obamacare made all this, it wasn't great before, but it's gotten a lot worse since. And every single thing they told us about Obamacare, because there's still this debate, well, we're Republicans, maybe some people are saying we shouldn't mess with replacing Obamacare. Are you kidding? So remember, I call them the 8 lies of Obamacare. You like your plan, you keep your plan. Remember that one? Like your doctor, keep your doctor. Premiums are going to decline. Premiums are going to decline on average $2,500. Remember that? The president said that. Deductibles will go down. Really? They even told us, remember this one? They even told us the website's going to work. Remember that one? They said the website is actually secure, your information. Then they said they created 22 co-ops. These are supposed to be the end-all, wonderful, God bless America, these are going to be wonderful. Every single one of them has went bankrupt. None of them are in existence today. So that's just 8 lies. And you know why we know they were lies? Because remember this, what was that guy's name, the MIT professor? We got caught on tape telling us, yeah, we lied to the American people. Like, it was Gruber. I couldn't remember. I questioned him. That's something that wouldn't answer my question. I got mad at hearing. He told us that they lied to us. Like, so, of course, we have to get back to a model where people are, because right now what's happening in the small group individual market, what individuals are doing is, we got a doctor over in Bell Fountain in our district, Dr. Kaufman. He's family practice doc, and he takes families, he's got like a couple hundred families, they pay him so much a month, and he's their doctor. You call up, you get treatment right away. You need to get in, you call in the morning, you get in the afternoon. You get your full 30 minutes to talk to the doctor about your son's problem, your daughter's problem, your whatever. And so many families are doing that for kind of basic health concerns and preventive issues and things. And then they'll have one of these Medishare Christian plans as their catastrophic. Because that's all people can afford. And that's what the market is now creating in healthcare. Got to get back to where people are in control, not the government, the big insurance companies and everything else. All right.
comes from Scott Callahan. Will you call for the end of the Mueller probe, finally? And would you accept the Speaker of the House position?
There's no accepting the Speaker of the House. You got to get the votes. So we got to keep the majority, and then we'll see how it plays out. The Mueller probe, I think, is getting close to winding down. I mean, I think there will be some changes happening shortly after the election. I think Jeff Sessions is probably not going to be Attorney General a whole lot longer, if I had to guess. I'm hopeful Mr. Rosenstein is eventually going to come talk to us. I think he is in effect running the Justice Department. And there's a number of things that I think we're entitled to see that he won't give us. Like the McCabe, if you follow this, Andy McCabe wrote a number of these memos. I want to see the McCabe memos. They've been subpoenaed. He hasn't produced them and given them to Congress. He wrote what I call the addendum to the scope memo. On May 17, 2017, when Bob Mueller was tasked with the special counsel, there was a memo written by Mr. Rosenstein outlining the scope of his investigation. That was changed and altered in some fashion on August 2nd of last year. We've yet to see that. Mr. Meadows and I have been asking. I was in Mr. Rosenstein's office and asked him about it. He got all mad, but I said, but I think my logic is solid. I said, look, you changed the scope of the investigation on August 2nd, 2017. We have not seen that. Congress has not seen it. The American people have not seen it. I think the American people have a right to know the entire scope and parameters of any investigation into the guy they made president. It's called We the People. It's sort of how it's supposed to work in this country. He's like, well, we got it all right. Like, I don't care about all that. Like, this is an investigation into the guy we elected. We want to know what it's, what's the framework. He hasn't given us that, so he hasn't given us the McCabe memos, hasn't given us the scope memo, hasn't given us the Jim Baker, what's called the 302s, when Jim Baker is interviewed by the FBI, their notes. When Bruce Orr, top Justice Department official, was interviewed by the FBI 13 times, we haven't seen those. We've asked for those. Haven't seen the FISA application. And on top of all that, Rod Rosenstein, it's alleged, said that he was thinking about wearing a wire to record the President of the United States and talking about the 25th Amendment. And he wants to come testify under terms that he sets. We're like, no. You got to come in under oath and answer the questions like everyone else does. So that to me is one of the biggest concerns. Mueller, I think, is done relatively soon after the election, and I think there's probably going to be a new Attorney General relatively soon after the election.
Yeah. Last question. Yeah. What is the difference between the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday group?
Well, I mean, in simple terms, the Tuesday group are the more moderate Republican members of the Republican conference, and the Freedom Caucus is, by and large, the more conservative. But it's interesting. Some of the folks in the Freedom Caucus aren't as maybe conservative on their voting record as others, but I think they're willing. I think what sets our group apart is we're willing to just stand up and fight. We have, maybe more than I should say, but we have sort of two unwritten rules in the Freedom Caucus. One is you have to be willing to vote against leadership, and the second one is you have to be willing to vote with leadership. Because there are some members who will, on any big, important vote, it can never get good enough. They can never vote yes on anything and that's one problem. But the bigger problem is there are lots of members, I think, who can never go against leadership when they're not really doing what we said. Take this, a great example would be this, remember back in the spring, the omnibus spending bill, the big spending bill? It was 2,232 pages. We had 15 hours to look at it, 1 hour to debate it. Funded things we said we wouldn't, didn't fund things we said we would. Every single member of the Freedom Caucus voted against it. Because it was like, this is not what the election was, that's not what we said we were going to do. More importantly, or as importantly, we were poised to actually make a big difference. Because if you remember, that vote was in late March, right before Easter. About 6 weeks before that, we had passed a real short-term bill that kind of tied the government over for a few weeks while we were negotiating all this. It was like a 3-week funding bill. And it went to the Senate, and Chuck Schumer got the bill, and he says, we're not going to pass it. Amnesty is more important than funding the government. Remember that? Right? And for a couple days, the American people said, while he had shut the government down, the American people said, you're crazy, right? Funding the government, funding the troops is a lot more important than this crazy DACA amnesty issue that you're working on. And so he, figured it out and said, Shazam, I'm going to open the government back up. Remember that? So that was the backdrop. Jump ahead a few weeks to this omnibus spending bill. We were poised to actually get good things done, and maybe most importantly, the pattern that's developed in Washington is if you pass the defense bill, which is supposed to be a separate bill, fund our troops, take care of our national security needs, the Senate always holds that up and says, we're not going to pass that until you give us the dollar for dollar increase in all the rest of the social welfare, all the rest of the government. And so you get this big omnibus ugly bill. Well, we were poised to change that because Schumer just shut the government down. We're foolish. Let's say, no, we're going to increase defense. We're not going to grow the rest of the government. We're going to actually begin to save some money and start to deal with this deficit and debt problem we have. We were ready to win, and we had our conference convinced to go there, but our leadership said no. So those kind of bills are where the Freedom Caucus will say, let's fight. Let's have the national debate. After all, we got a guy in the White House who's pretty darn good at conveying a message. We got a chance to win this now. Especially when the backdrop was Chuck Schumer had just shut the government down a few weeks before and looked stupid. And yet I always say it's like walking out there in a wrestling, walk out of a wrestling match, you shake hands, the ref blows the whistle, and you go at it. What we do in Congress, we walk out and shake hands, and before the ref blows the whistle, we say, time out, we're just going to forfeit and let them win, right? No, you got to wrestle the match, you got to have the debate. And sometimes you might not win. But if you never played the game, if you never engage in the debate, I know we'll never win. So that's what's got to change in the Freedom Caucus. We're willing to have the debate. And if we get pretty close, so example, in this situation, we decreased defense spending like 70-some billion, and they wanted to grow the rest of the government like, I don't know, 60-some billion dollars. I think it was 68 billion. Well, like, this is ridiculous. We got record low unemployment economies. We got all this social welfare you want to increase. We got 40-some million people, or close to 40 million people on food. We could change some of this stuff. And we wanted to just flatline, not cut anything, just not save the 68 billion. But in the end, if the deal would have been, you know what, let's just grow the rest of government 15, 20 billion, well, then you maybe take the deal. But you never get to that better position if you're not willing to have the debate. And so that's what we try to do strategically and tactically in the Freedom Caucus. Let me just maybe finish one last thought, and I'll let you finish up the meeting here. The president's a good guy. If you, I'm sure many of you have had a chance to visit with him, but I always say to the group, I wish every American could spend some time with him. You cannot help but like him when you're around him. There's just an energy about him that is positive. Loves our troops, loves our veterans, loves the law enforcement people, and just hardworking Americans that make the country great. And we had this crazy story this past summer, people saying things that just were not true about me, and the president was like, well, the first to defend me. And 2 days into the story, he called me up. He's like, you keep fighting, this is baloney, this is the... I said, well, thanks, Mr. President. I said, but now I know how you feel every single day. We got it hard, but like, he gets it every day, nonstop, from everybody. And yet he just keeps fighting back, and it's exactly what the swamp needed, was someone to come down there and kick things around a little bit, and he is certainly doing it. So, he's not on the ballot. I said this the other day too. It's like, this election is about somebody whose name's not even on the ballot. In many ways, it is. So that's all the more reason I think we need to do everything we can the next week to help Steve Stivers win here and others win across the state and around the country. All right, God bless y'all. Thank you very much.
Congressman Jim Jordan, especially for taking the time out of your day during the campaign cycle to come and help Ohio United for America. Thank you. The appreciation to actually for all of our special donors, obviously for any donation that you all have made, especially our sponsors this evening, as well as all of our volunteers, and also the other co-founders, both Holly Adams, Rhonda Ball, and Kathy Hoskins that's been helping us out, especially in planning events like the debate and then tonight's event. A special thanks, obviously, for all of you coming out this evening too. Again, we know we're at the end of the campaign cycle. Everyone's really tired. They're done with the fundraising for sure. So we appreciate all of your time.